why I just tell you a little about this one's in Vienna, and about 1432-33, so early Roger. I'll tell you right away, it's 7 1/4 inches high, about 18.5 centimeters. It's about, again, it's a big postcard basically. The last couple of times I've been to Vienna, I've missed it because it's just so damn small that you're running around looking at enormous Rubenses and Bruegels and things. And it's a bit hard to find something like this. So anyway, this is just to introduce you to Roger, who was, it seems to have been born in Tournai, 1399, 1400, something like that. And remember, Tournai is where Robert Compin showed up for the first time in 1406. And just to remind you where places are, because there's Tournai down the bottom, not that far from Brussels, 30, 40 miles or so. I mean, again, Bruges, if you're staying in Bruges, you want to hop out and get to Ghent to see the Ghent Autobahn, you can be there and back in a day quite easily, so it's not that far. You can even go over to Brussels in the same day if you have to. And then all the other places that we see, like there's Flemal, remember the master of Flemal. Antwerp at this time was more just of a commercial city. You don't think of it as being as artistic, perhaps, as some of the other places. So anyway, this is where Roger grows up. And just again, don't worry about specific dates. We don't know really much about him at all until 1427. That's when he enters the studio of Robert Compin. And he's there until 1432. And as I say, he's too old to be an apprentice, so maybe more of an assistant than anything. But in 1432, which again is old if he was born in 1400, he becomes a master in the guild of painters in Tournai. And you couldn't work unless you were in the guild. Only hugely rare exceptions. The guilds had terrific power in all trades. So basically, but the normal process, once you served your apprenticeship, you usually about 21 when you became an independent master. So again, I can never quite understand why he does things so slowly. 1435, he actually moved to Brussels. So again, not that very far at all, but Brussels, the capital of the Duchy of Burgundy by this point, so maybe just better for business. Not, again, much. 1436, he was appointed city painter of Brussels. And at that time, he was already married with 2 children. 1450, he visited Italy. And that's actually, later on, people like Rubens, well, even Dürer, who we get to, they make sort of artistic pilgrimages to Italy, because that's where the good art was, they thought. And 1450, if you know your pilgrimages, that's the Jubilee year. Every 50 years, they had a super duper pilgrimage. I think you got even quicker ticket to heaven, basically. And so people would have been pouring down Rome. So I think perhaps, maybe just a coincidence, that it was a religious journey rather than just an artistic one. Certainly, as we'll see when we get there, there's pretty much no influence artistically of this trip to Italy. Other artists go down there, come back, they've got a whole new style, a whole new outlook on life. Roger just keeps on doing the same old, basically. So again, I think maybe for the good of his soul rather than his artistic personality. 1464 died in Brussels. So I mean, it's just not that much. A little bit like Compin, there's not a single signed or dated work by him. I mean, really is exceptional. I think there's 8 or 9 signed dated works, which is terrific. There are references to pictures painted by Roger in contemporary documents. Not one of them can be actually hooked up to an actual painting. There's, again, a huge grey area, as you can imagine, between early Roger, late Compin, and people are constantly shifting between. And as I said before, it's partly the system, because if you're an apprentice or a colleague, your job is to paint your master's pictures, basically, because you have to, it's his style, not yours. And so that leads to this kind of, as I say, this grey area between certain artists. But whoever did this, I mean, it's an extraordinarily sweet picture. I don't think you would ever apply the word sweet to the paintings of Jan van Eyck. And remember, it's only 7 inches high or so. And what we see, again, is quite a clever, not in your face illusionism, but it's almost as if she's standing in a niche, like a statue. There's a lovely, again, remembering it's 7 inches high. He's a bit of a scrawny looking Christ child, isn't he? Lovely sort of, the colour set off against the brocaded back cloth, little, nice bejeweled crown, lovely hair. All the tracery that you would find in kind of actual architectural detailing. This is Adam feeling a little bit self-conscious, being driven out of the Garden of Eden by the avenging angel, and there's Eve getting sucked in by the serpent. Go on, eat it, I won't tell anyone. That didn't work. And there's God hanging around overhead, just looking on, you can just see the dove of the Holy Spirit as well. So that's a ton of stuff in that little amount of space. The throne that they, rather than sitting on, standing in front of, again, lions. So now you've got the throne of Solomon, wisdom, all that stuff. See, but here's another, see that little bit of the road, it just comes over the edge, a little shadow, boom. Now you've got your little trompe-l'oeil thing going on. Very sophisticated stuff. A little bit similar, but quite a lot different from another examination of honor in the church, which totally lacked any sort of intimacy. That's what's sort of nice about Roger. He kind of brings things to us, makes them accessible. This little guy, he's first of all, he's not very childlike, but he's not interested in us, it seems, in just sort of more symbolic almost in some way, but it's almost actual mother and child, that sort of idea that comes out here. So, can't remember why I put that one in, no reason whatsoever. Okay, now this is my superstar picture for this little bit. We might even just finish off with this today because it's a hard act to follow. I think this is one of the great, I flashed this up last time just to make sure you came today. It's just called St. Luke Drawing the Virgin. About 1435, which is still pretty early on. It's about 4.5 feet high, 137 centimeters high. And now the difficult thing in some ways is that, if you were a painter and you painted a successful picture and people liked it, you would do another one. It would be repeated. And that's sort of probably the case with the Mayroad Altarpiece by Compton. There's more than one version, at least of the central area. So in this case, there are versions in Boston, Bruges, Munich, and the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. And it's just possible that not one of them is the original, that they're all slightly later versions, copies, from Roger's studio. But when you're looking at each one, I think I've seen all of them in the flesh. There's no way you could tell, that's not very good, is it? Because they're all superb, and the content is always the same. And it depends where you live. The people in Boston think theirs is the best and the first, and the people in Bruges, most people sort of rather dump on that one and think it might be actually a copy from quite later on in the century. But it is an amazingly good picture. Now, St. Luke himself, who we see here, was one of those multitasking characters. First of all, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He's the author of the third gospel. But he is the patron saint of artists, students, doctors, and butchers, which seems to be a slightly odd mix somehow. He was a doctor. He's wearing a physician's cap on his head. That's what it is there. As the writer, I'm not sure if I got details. No, I don't think I do. In behind here, if you can just see that, that's sort of his office, because he's got the book, nice view out of the window there. So that's where he'll pop around the corner in a minute and start writing Gospels. And I'm not sure if you can just see under that is the ox, which is his emblem. Remember, the four evangelists have emblems. The angel for Matthew, the ox for Luke, the lion of St. Mark, and the eagle of St. John. So that's one way of identifying them. So that's sort of his sideline, I guess you could say, writing Gospels. But what he's doing now and why he's important for artists is that by legend he painted a portrait of the Madonna and Child. And the real one, I couldn't get a good shot of it because it's illegal, it's in the Church of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, in a big chapel you're not supposed to go in because it's reserved for people who actually want to pray rather than horrible tourists like me. Anyway, and it's not from the year nothing or the year one for sure, but it's a nice idea that the Virgin and Child would have been recorded. So that's what's going on here, but not doing the painting. Obviously, again, a little bit like the portrait of the Cardinal, doing the drawing. And, I mean, first of all, just look at that face. As with those other saints, the lawyer and or the goldsmith, I think that, well, everybody wants this to be a self-portrait of Roger as St. Luke, the painter. That's why I should have mentioned that many places around Europe, the Guild of Artists is called the Guild of St. Luke because of this episode. But this is such a wonderfully real face. And you got your stubble and all that stuff there, but perhaps not quite as picky as Van Eyck, but pretty good. But there's that sort of specificity, which I think is very good. And even again, a little bit of white touch at the throat, just to kind of hold things up. I like the way that the hair comes curling out under the cap. And there's the hand. I mean, the hands themselves are just about as much of a self-portrait as the faces somehow. These wonderful, slightly dirty fingernail, gnarly knuckles. And again, it doesn't make it great art to paint knuckles, but kind of still nice to look at. And here he is. This is the how-to, because there's this lovely drawing of the Virgin's face, and this is the silver point. No lead in the pencil, just you touch the metal point to the paper, the coated paper, and the line appears. And as I say, you can't rub it out. But it's just extraordinary how detailed all of that nice stuff there is. And then, of course, this is the absolute best part of the whole thing, because, first of all, you have this lovely Mary who, again, sort of looks down lovingly at her Christ child. And, as I said, this is this extraordinary sort of squirmy-looking character. Nobody had painted the Christ child like this before. He's like this spastic fellow, just rigid with delight. And without being too sacrilegious, because I honestly think he's just let out an enormous fart, because that's what babies do when they look. I mean, look at that face next to the breast. Have any of you got? I mean, I used to offer to bring my babies in to demonstrate, but one's 30 and one's 29 now, so it wouldn't be quite as successful somehow. Anyway, I mean, it's just, this is humanized. I mean, that's the best way to put it. It's a mother and baby rather than just a Madonna and Child. But just from the artistic point of view, look at all this amazingly embroidered sleeve that she wears, the scalloped edge of her, I guess it's the headdress that she's brought down around her shoulders. It's the same sort of material at least. And then bits and pieces of the sort of embroidered, the setting behind her. And again, this is zooming in on that. It's just wonderfully good. And so this is all, again, as I said, with Jan van Eyck, he's never quite as approachable, I think, as with as Roger. But if you look at the setting, I mean, it should remind you of something, because it's actually quite similar to that, isn't it? With the sort of human and the divine zones, separated by three spaces, and of course, anybody seeing three spaces would immediately think of Trinity at that time. You've got a slightly similar motif of the couple here, standing on this sort of battlemented area. And again, who are they? Don't know. Maybe again, just to suggest that we're fairly high up as they look down. And one of the things for sure that you can see is there's not nearly all this million-mile distance stuff with this extraordinary amount of. Roger doesn't do that. He's much more just. It's almost like a painted backcloth in a stage set somehow, with this very schematic way of showing the water. But he doesn't bother with all the little bit, and there's relatively little architectural detail, things like that. So I think he'd rather keep your eye in the foreground rather than let you wander off into the distance.